Hey everyone, I'm here with Kim Moody, director of Moody's Gartner Tax Law. Kim is, I met Kim through a guy named Dave Wallach. Dave, if you're watching this, hi. Dave runs commercial brokerage up in Calgary. Kim was described to me the following way. He said if you can get him to take his eyes off of the Canadian tax code, then he will talk to you. He said that he carries it around with him everywhere he goes. Kim is currently, are you currently in law school too? Oh, you're muted.
No, I'm not.
Okay, not anymore. Continue.
I got admitted to law school a few years ago, but I decided because I'm so damn busy that I'll do it when I'm less busy.
Well, literally, because I see you going up in front of like the Canadian Parliament or House. I mean, is it Parliament, House Commons? You represent the Canadian taxpayers, and you actually contribute to tax policy in Canada.
I try. I mean, there's a lot of people across Canada that do, but that's certainly one of my passions is to make sure that Canada gets it right, and that's I'll contribute my expertise in the way I can, and it's fun, and it's somebody needs to do it. So
You're being
I like
very
it.
humble right now.
I'm trying.
For those of you guys that are not in Canada, I don't know any tax person anywhere that has more responses, more engagement, is more notorious for knowing the tax code. I mean, I know people up in Ottawa that are clients of our company that message me and they tell me like, they have a lot of respect for Kim's expertise in the field. And for me, I'll tell you guys real quick, this happened yesterday. A lot of people know Lennox Lewis, the boxer, is a client of our company. He called me yesterday for about 20 minutes just to talk about what's happening in the sports world. And I appreciated that because Lennox is a world heavyweight champion, maybe the best heavyweight boxer ever, Canadian guy. And I appreciate people who are experts in their field. And Kim, you are an expert in a very narrow, very technical, and yet very important field. I didn't care about tax until I started making money. And then I started to care.
Yeah, and it's too bad, right? Because a lot of people who even aren't making money should care about tax, because in many ways that's, they may be relying on our tax system in order to live and get the benefits of society. So it's very pervasive, very important, and I try my best to spread the word about why it's important, but anyhow, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
Hey man, and I understand it from both ends. I mentioned to you before. I migrated to Canada from the Soviet Union. I remember very much what it was like to be on welfare. So I did in fact benefit from a social safety net with my family, and then obviously I was able to use that springboard in order to become an entrepreneur and grow a global company. And so there are two sides to this, and I think I have an understanding on both sides. Question for you: right now the world sucks, and everybody is staying home. How do you feel, as much as you can say without being put in prison for disparaging our government, how do you feel about the response that the government has issued regarding the current situation?
Well, I mean, on balance, trying to be empathetic in the position that they're in. I mean, let's be real blunt, though. I mean, they're not the sharpest tools in the shed that are leading our response right now. I don't have a lot of respect for the intelligence of the people that are leading this response. But having said that, they've got a very, very important mandate that they're trying hard to carry out. And so with that, I'll support it, and Canadians need to support it, and opposition parties need to support what they're trying to do. And so do I think they could have done a better, acted quicker, maybe shut our borders, on international flights and things like that sooner? Sure, but hindsight's 2020, and everybody can be an armchair critic. So, but I think what's going on today is very difficult, unprecedented. I mean, I don't like staying at home. I love my family, but I also don't like to see my business and my clients' businesses fail. And that's exactly what's happening as a result of the health measures that are put in place to try and slow or flatten the curve per se. And so it's an extremely difficult balancing act that we're trying to, the policymakers are trying to deliver. Keep the Canadians safe.
I'm going to come back.
Kill the economy.
I'm going to come back to that in a second. I want to ask you though. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Whenever I'll tell you why. Whenever somebody in our company comes to me and has some complaints, I say, thank you for sharing that. How would you like it to be? What would you have done? So if you are leading the government right now and you want to offer a relief package for businesses or a response, what would you do?
I wouldn't do probably too much different than what they're doing, other than trying to speed up the delivery of cash. And let me take a step back. There was a stat put out yesterday by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. And through all their networks and homework, and they say that 1/3 of Canadian businesses will be bankrupt, or I don't think they use the word bankrupt, but let's just say there's no more cash. And by the end of the month, by the end of March. Holy cow, Dimitry. I mean, 1/3 are going to have to shut their doors and maybe never return again. So what does the government need to do in order to, and if I'm there, what is the solution, knowing that as the background? Because at the end of the day, it's businesses that put money in the hands of individuals. Yes, public sector does, but by far it's small businesses and overall business. And so they need cash. Small businesses need cash to keep their employees to the extent that they have a viable business, pay rent. Those are number one and number two in terms of cost. And when the cash dries up because the revenue's basically dried up, and they may have a viable business at the end of this, at the end of the tunnel when we get out of this thing, that's what they need to survive, is cash. And so if I was the government or policymaker at the table, I'd be looking for any single way to help the small business owner immediately preserve cash.
Yeah, that's been actually a little bit shocking for me. Obviously we're watching it very closely with our team, and I think the relief being offered is something like up to $1,200 or $1,300 per employee, up to a total of $25,000. And I literally laughed when I saw that. I said, $25,000? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, here's the kicker too, and I put this on my LinkedIn account. A buddy of mine pointed this out to me, which I'm sure I would have figured it out eventually, but he figured it out immediately. I guess he's a little brighter than me, but so $1,300, it's actually $1,375 to be exact, as a wage subsidy. And you can get it immediately by reducing the payroll remittances, the employer payroll remittances, which is good. But the problem is, and I mentioned this yesterday in a radio interview, in order to get that subsidy, you have to pay as an employer $13,750. So because it's over a 90-day period. I made the mistake yesterday when I said it was monthly, talking to some people, but it's over a 90-day period. But the employer portion of payroll taxes, CPP and EI, is about $1,000.
Yeah.
So you've got to, as an employer, you've got the decision to either lay off or terminate an employee, or continue to pay $13,750 in salary to get that $1,375, or $13,750 salary to get that $1,375 remittance, but you've got to pay $1,000. I mean, it's peanuts. If they want to make it meaningful and actually get some real cash, so that the decision at the table is, oh, wow, maybe I don't have to lay this person off. Maybe I can use that cash to ride out this storm. That would be probably, and I haven't crunched the math, but probably in the 50% range of the subsidy. I think Denmark has done somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 80%, which I don't know if Canada can afford that. But having said that, they do have to make it pretty meaningful.
I have a more sardonic view of the situation, Kim. I think that honestly, I don't think the Canadian government likes businesses. That's how I feel.
Wow.
Because, dude, straight up, it's impractical. And I live in Estonia, and a lot of people know, well, heck, that. I exited, and I live in Estonia about 5 years now, and the government here responded immediately with a 60% wage subsidy and coverage of all social security taxes for employees. That's a drastic measure. We were looking at a list of who was going to go, and then we looked and I said, look, my payroll just got reduced by, so the payroll tax here is quite high. It's like 40%, but not having to pay that, and then not having to pay 40% of the salary, or 60% of the salary. They're like, okay, our payroll just got reduced by 75 or so percent. Perfect.
Well, you prove my point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to go back to your, using your big word, sardonic, that's too big of a word for me.
Dark humor. Yes. Sorry.
But I don't necessarily disagree with you. The policy delivery, ever since the present government has been in power, for their first term and now their second term, has not been kind to private businesses. And so it's disappointing, but I do share your view.
How would you design a tax plan that would be just in general? Like if you wanted Canada, I talked to Richard Carlton yesterday, the CEO of the Canadian Securities Exchange. And, one of the things we talked about a lot off camera, we talked for like an hour off camera, was just about, how to design a system that rewards entrepreneurship instead of suppresses it, because there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in the world and in Canada. What are some things you would do from a tax perspective to encourage more entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. And I don't have all the answers, but very coincidentally, I don't know if I can plug my new book. Can I plug my new book?
Please, I would love to read it. I will actually read it.
So it's being released today, as a matter of fact.
Uh-huh.
So to all your listeners out there, it's a book called Making Life Less Taxing, and it's a macro-based book in terms of what can you do to take a look at reducing your tax load individually, and that's about the first half of the book. And the second half is what can Canada, or for that matter, other jurisdictions do, but of course the focus is on Canada because that's where I am, do to try and make a better tax system. And so I spent a lot of time talking about how we need to tear down everything. I mean, what we have in our income tax system in Canada, I don't know about Estonia, but in Canada, it's a 50-year-old car that has been repaired way too many times, and so it's barely moving along, and it's not very modern. And so literally we need to put that car to the junkyard.
Just my mom, if you're listening to this, I told you that crappy 88 Corolla you gave me university needed to be a different car, but continue. It's terrible.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, Jesus.
But anyhow, so I mean, from that analogy, we just need to start over. And one of the things I really like, I'm a big fan of Jack Mintz. I don't know if you know Jack Mintz.
I'm going to plug our company. He's a client. Hi, Jack.
He's an awesome guy.
Great economist too, yeah.
He's such a great thinker, and frankly, Canada's lucky to have such a great thinker like that. And for years, he's always advocated that we should be shifting away from a personal income tax to a user-based tax, like a value-added tax, and I think that makes much more sense. It's it will not punish the entrepreneurs like an income tax does, both corporate income tax and personal income tax, especially the personal income tax. I mean, in Canada, as the highest personal tax rate is shared by a number of provinces, including BC now, which were just crazy to reduce their personal income taxes last month in their budget to the equivalent of almost 54%. And Ontario and Quebec are the same, and there's some Atlantic provinces, and even Alberta, where you used to live. We used to have the lowest tax in Canada, 39%, which arguably is still fairly high.
It is, and 53% is like that. That's for those of you guys. I mean, I know we have clients in Hong Kong listening. They're just high-fiving themselves right now. Yes, you guys win at 16% flat corporate. Australia shares something similar to Canada. Obviously, we're under the crown, but there's folks on this call listening in the Nordic countries, and I think sometimes when I visit our clients in Norway, and they think that, but Canada's not so socialist. I go, 53% highest marginal tax rate is pretty darn socialist.
Yeah. So I would start there from, if I was so lucky to be on a committee, for example, that was looking at tearing down and rebuilding Canada's tax system, I would really advocate for that. And then there's a whole bunch of little small things that actually become important. But what do we need? What do we need to do to our social support system? What do we need? Is our Canada pension plan and EI system appropriate? I would argue it is, but it should be a lot more targeted. I really like what Australia generally does. Their superannuation fund. I think that makes some sense.
And let's say Kiwi. Let's shout out to our New Zealand clients too. Kiwi Saver, which has a free transfer between the superannuation and the Kiwi. We know that because we've had some employees move back and forth. So good job, Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, they've been one of the leaders in terms of looking at those kinds of pension funds. And the Canada Pension Fund, while it's massive, it's just not that impactful in the whole scheme of things. So I would look at things like that, Dimitry. But as I say in my book, that's in my view, the starting point is a shift from income taxes to a value-added tax, a meaningful shift.
Now, I severely back that, and I'll tell you why, if I may. So I have a different view or at least a unique perspective, in that our company has sort of our company has a couple of employees, but in a lot of different places. Like we have a couple in Australia, a couple in Hong Kong, a couple in Canada. That's just how our company operates, right? And then centrally, we help them with some appointments to go see clients, sell them suits, but our employees locally are just a couple. And when I think about what that implies for a business, in a lot of ways, I think about how the world is operating today. For example, where's income declared? Like if you're selling products online, and you know that Facebook, Google, these are all companies in Ireland because there's a lower tax rate in Ireland, right? So what's different from them, and sometimes I have these conversations with people, what's different from 1960 to today is that today companies can operate from anywhere. And with transfer pricing, companies can legally and ethically, create systems that allow them to declare taxes in places like Hong Kong, for example, where there's a 16% flat tax, which puts pressure, I think, on governments that understand that business today is global and not local. It should put pressure on governments to be competitive against other governments because they're fighting for my business as an entrepreneur. My business is the tax revenue that I provide. They're fighting for my business.
Right.
And I don't think that arrogant governments are going to win. I think, I moved, and I'm sure you had, I think a big part of your practice is helping people change tax residency.
It is, yeah. And I tend to agree with you. And frankly, you're tripping into some topics that the world is struggling with right now. Like the OECD, as you probably know, and probably many of your listeners know, have been working on the so-called base erosion profit shifting plan for, at least 4 years now. And one of the things they're really struggling with is how do you tax people like you? How do you tax, where you can literally operate anywhere in the world? And I do think that value-added taxes have a significant piece of that solution or that new design worldwide. But
let me tell you just real quick. I don't mean to interrupt, but I think our listeners would really appreciate this. But I know how to tax people like me. So I live in Estonia. My wife's Estonian. We moved here, and I actually read through the tax code and tried to understand what was happening. And I thought, this is brilliant. See, Estonia is a country of 1 million people. They have no natural resources to compete with. The only thing that Estonia can compete with is intellectual property. That's so it puts it in a very disadvantaged but unique position because they're small and they're shifty. And so what Estonia did, understanding that the internet and online and globalization was sort of the way that the world was heading in terms of trade, in terms of markets, in terms of business, Estonia has no corporate income tax, zero. Now people say, well, how the F does Estonia make money? I'll tell you how. So I substantially moved my business to Estonia about 2015. Now, when the company started to become profitable, I needed people. I needed people to count the beans. And when it became profitable, I'm like, well, I want to be more profitable. So I started hiring more people. So not only did I hire more people, we needed to hire even more people now because we need now different layers of people, different functions in a business. And then I learned that Estonia has a tax on employment, like an employee tax, which includes social security and payroll tax, of something like 40%. It's like 30 something, like to say 40%. And I go, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. They want you to make money so that you hire people, and then as your company grows, they tax you when you hire those people. But you can't undo that because you physically need people to do the work. That's a very brilliant global view. And then we opened an office in Bulgaria, 10% flat corporate income tax. I said, that's 10% is amazing, and that's lower wages. But the total taxes on payroll amount to about 53%. So we were growing, and then because the money was concentrating, we needed to hire more people to help expand our business, and then boom, that's when we start to get taxed. And you know what? Nobody feels bad about it because now you only hire people that give you value added because there's going to be an additional cost to it. Yeah. And you have more cash to actually grow the business when you have to pay half of what you make to the government. You can't hire as many people then, and so people do get negatively affected by that. So I think that system works, but my experience.
Well, I appreciate that experience. I'm familiar with some of it, as you know, but I don't disagree with you that is an incentive-based system to help you grow, and that's what I think policymakers, especially in Canada, need to really start thinking about. And we've been ringing that bell for quite a few years, but unfortunately, this current government, there's just no interest in any sort of comprehensive review or reform. But Canada needs it in a really bad way.
How are your clients affected? I mean, Calgary's been, you guys know, everybody listening, Calgary is an oil city, $28 a barrel. and now this hits. I mean, what are you seeing with your portfolio of clients?
They're being devastated, right? I mean, Calgary's such a great town. I mean, we miss you here.
I miss you guys. I tell my wife, I love Alberta. I'll tell you later how I ended up in Alberta. I love Alberta.
Well, Alberta's a pretty special place in the world, and you've traveled more than I have, but I can tell you every time the airplane lands back in Cowtown, as we call it, it's a special moment for me because it's home. It's an entrepreneurial city, and it's young and thriving. But I can tell you in the last, it started with the oil crash in 2014, and then the unexpected provincial socialist government that was elected, which devastated our province. And then shortly thereafter, the election of, socialist Trudeau. And I can tell you it's been one hit after another since 2014. And the latest hit with the pandemic and with the crash in oil prices, the Saudi and Russia war, oil war, it's just crushed Alberta. And it's really sad to see. I'm looking out my window here, Dimitri, and you know where my office is on.
Of course, 4th, yeah. Or 6th,
on
you're
4th
60.
Street. And,
yeah,
no, it's
4th.
on Mission.
Mission, yeah.
Mission and it's in the Mission area, and 20th Avenue and 4th Street.
Yeah, I was thinking 4th and 16th, but I then remembered you're past 17th, up across from this, from Phil and Sebastian's coffee shop.
That's right.
Hello, Rob, if you're listening to this, good guy. Anyways,
he's. I can tell you, it's spooky, right? Because first of all, nobody's around.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think a lot of these businesses that were once thriving, my guess is a lot of them are simply not going to be able to reopen, and it's so sad. And Calgary's not immune, not alone in this issue, but I think where we are unique is that we've had hit after hit after hit after hit, and the pandemic combined with the recent oil crash. Oh my God, I don't know how much longer, but we're pretty high spirited. That's the wrong word, but we're pretty positive people here in Calgary, as you know.
Just say it. Albertans have balls of steel.
There you go. That's a good way to say it.
That is a fact, and that is not a cliche. That is not a oversimplifications. Albertans have balls of steel.
Well, I like that description then, because it's true, and per capita, you won't find more entrepreneurs in Canada than in Calgary and Alberta. And I think to be an entrepreneur, as you know, you need to have balls of steel. And so, especially during this time. So we're doing our best to reach out and touch clients. And, the series that you're doing yourself is so fantastic. It's such an awesome idea because you get it, right? During this time of people are scared, and they're looking for support. They're looking for connections. We're social beings. One of the things that
let's tell the truth for a second because we have an opportunity here. We're both scared.
Yeah, absolutely.
You run a significant tax and I guess tax and some tax law. Like you run a significant firm. We're not just saying, oh, you guys. It's like, no, we had this conversation before the call started. Like we are faced with these problems. We have people to pay. We have rent to pay.
Absolutely. So to suggest that I'm not scared, and that would be an outright lie. Right. But, I wrote a blog on that about a week ago. I don't know if you read it. It's called Calm Leadership. It's on my website. I've had a few haters about it. Some people that say, you sound too blasé. Like, this is a real thing, Kim. You should be doing all these things and blah, blah, blah. Hey, listen, people. I'll do what I need to do in order to provide good leadership, to remain calm, to not incite panic, and make sure that ultimately there's light at the end of the tunnel here, and grab the opportunities that'll be there at the end, that end of the tunnel. And I want to position ourselves to, number one, be ready to get, to walk through this tunnel, which is going to be pretty dark, but also to see the light and grab the opportunities, which a lot of people just don't think about. And so that's what we're doing, and it's scary, but I really like what you're doing. So, kudos to you for connecting with people and just see how they're doing. It's fantastic that you're doing this.
I want to take credit. I'll pass the credits. Really do. It's GLA, our client up in Perth, Australia, who called me. I don't know if I maybe talked to her once before. She called me. I never met her. She called me. She's like, I'm one of your clients. And she said, I think that you have a unique opportunity. She said, you know, a lot of business leaders from around the world because of, you know, the people that are buying these products, they're business leaders, and you have an opportunity to tell people that we're not alone. You're not alone. I'm not alone, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, it's interesting to me, you know, man, like, and I know we're going to wrap this up here shortly, but it's interesting to me because all the focus, of course, is on the people at the ground level, the employees, and it's always the focus. But, and this is going to sound very, very selfish, but the truth needs to be said. We are the ones writing the checks. And the pressure on business leaders, it's not just about feeding your family. You also feel immense guilt and immense conflict about how to act when you are responsible for other people's livelihoods too. And maybe this is the place to say it, because our audience, a lot of folks in our audience are partners in firms, and they are writing their own checks, and they're writing checks for others. And nobody is going to say that on TV because it's not a popular thing to say, and governments are going to be afraid to say, like, well, why do you care about those guys? It's like, well, those guys write your checks. So this is very real for every single layer.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The entrepreneurs like yourself are the ones that are writing the check. You're the ones taking all the risk, you know. But you know, I'm empathetic to what's going on. We don't want, obviously, a worldwide massacre from this virus, and so of course there's a balance in terms of the health issues, right? But how far, and this is the debate that I've had with even family members who disagree with me, right? You know, there's some family members of mine that think that you do whatever it takes to just, you know, kill this virus and make sure that ultimately it's gone. Well, sorry, you also got to make sure people survive, you know, financially, and because which I have one more thing to say. Please. So how far do you turn that dial to kill the economy? Like, do you kill it all the way?
Yeah. Or
do you find a balance? You know, Conrad Black wrote a really good article about that last weekend in
I read that.
You know, Natural Post, and it's, you know, he got criticized a lot for that because, of course, you know, a lot of the mainstream media want to just turn that dial.
Yep.
And they don't understand what the consequences are. Well, you're just going to kill the people like you that ultimately write checks, and that has literally a trickle-down effect to a lot of people. The other thing I'll say, just quickly, I know you want to wrap up here, which is fine.
No, you got stuff to do. It's morning for you. I don't, you know, I want to hear you. Everybody on this call that's listening is going to want to hear this. This is important.
One of the things that just drives me crazy, and you know I'm rather opinionated, but I hate this phrase, social distancing. What does that mean?
I don't like that either.
I mean, what does that mean? So I Googled it, you know, of course, a couple of weeks ago, and up comes, you know, the various definitions of how far you have to stay away, you know, 6 feet, blah, blah, blah. But then I started talking to, you know, some doctor friends of mine and nurse friends of mine. And I said, and it was them that just raised it. They said that they're purposely not using that phrase because it's not about social distancing. It's about physical distancing.
Yeah.
Just stay apart. You know, human beings are social in nature.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're doing, for example, to connect with people, again, I'll commend you for doing that because we're connecting. How long can you stay in your house?
Apparently about 2 days before I go crazy and get a babysitter so I can go outside.
How long can entrepreneurs or high performers, or anybody for that matter, stay in their house? And so to me, there's a balance here, right? And so I have purposely within our firm, within, you know, the verbiage I use on, you know, whenever I speak publicly, is to stop this whole bullshit, frankly, of social distancing. We need to connect as human beings during a crisis like this. And because that's just a foundational being of us. But do we need to physically stay apart? Sure.
Physically, yeah. Well, dude, you know, euphemisms are a hallmark of socialism. It's a whole.
Absolutely.
You know that already. It's like, you know, virtue signaling and saying the nice things. It's like, but look, the reality is most people, and you know this, and this is getting pretty blunt. Like most people would rather take a pleasant lie over an unpleasant truth.
Absolutely. Sugarcoat it.
Man, but that's and and it's funny because like in leadership, and this might be a topic for a different call with people having different opinions, but like a big part of leadership is finding that balance between communicating a hard truth in a pleasant way. I
I
think
think I think it gets down to, just on that point, empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy and trust. Do the people that you're leading trust you? And can you empathize with those people? And if so, then make sure your leadership actions are consistent with that empathy so that they continue to trust you.
The problem is instant validation. When it's so easy to say the thing that people want to hear, and you see it from our government, because you're so short-sighted. You have this short-sighted view of like what you want right now, and you tell people what they want to hear. Long term, that's going to lose trust. That's why socialism always fails long term, because people stop trusting the government. I've lived through it in Soviet Ukraine. I remember the breadlines. I was old enough, believe it or not, to remember that. And when my parents came to Canada, I remember them being very resentful towards socialism because they said, I'm done working for free, because I was told I'm great, and I was giving medals and certificates and told all these nice things. But eventually people start to realize the facts are facts and the reality is reality, and you can only sugarcoat things for so long. And I think it's just a cheap cop-out way to use soft words and pleasant lies, because long term it's not going to work.
I'm not a big fan of that, as you know, and I really like how Jordan Peterson talks about this kind of stuff as well. But maybe that's a topic for.
Well, I'm a Jordan. I've watched all of his every lecture online. In fact, his brother, who works for a political consulting firm, a very prominent one, is in Saskatoon as our client. So, hello, Mr. Peterson. We're still trying to get to Jordan. He is somebody that I quote frequently. So I appreciate that we share that fandom.
Well, I like straight shooters. Entrepreneurs tend to be straight shooters. Most entrepreneurs are not big fans of socialism. I'm sure it goes without saying I'm not a fan of socialism. Now, am I empathetic to people that need help in our society? Of course, we need to take care of people in our society, but the way to do that, in my view, is not through socialism.
Kim, I appreciate your time. I'm going to obviously tag you on this. I want more people to read your posts. I think they're important, even if people disagree. I think they're important. I think it's important to look at the facts and the truth, and I think it's important to sometimes be wrong. It's important too. It's whenever somebody.
How many times as an entrepreneur have you been wrong?
I have the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I've been wrong, dude. I mean, I've made bets that have cost me 7 figures wrong.
Yeah. You know what? So have I.
Yeah.
But am I embarrassed about it? No. Just move on.
I'm a little bit. I got an ego, just a little bit embarrassed, but but there's a line I'm going to share with our audience, and I don't claim to have any wisdom over what our clients have, man. I'm talking to people that are community leaders. You're on radio, you're on newspapers. Although I was interviewed by Global National yesterday. Yay, let's see how that goes. Yeah, it was really cool. The guy, Mike's an amazing guy. He's a reporter there, and he's a client of ours, and called me up, and I just thought, thanks, man. But I'm not claiming to have any more wisdom than our clients, but I'll tell you this. Whenever somebody comes to me with an opinion, and there are a lot of people that, as you know, running a company, people come to you with opinions all the time, and it's important to listen. And I think I'm wrong like 80% of the time. It's insane how wrong I am. It's actually quite shocking to even me, like, that I'm wrong almost all the time, and then I change my mind and I go, okay, you know what? Like, I see the facts. I'm going to try it your way, and if the results are going to be there, the results don't lie. But
that's a sign of good leadership, though, right? That you're willing to listen. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No. It's a sign of some leadership based on like years of failure. Like, I didn't just wake up and get it right. But I always say this. I say, look, I'm going to listen to you. I want to take the information. I want to take your facts. But I got a question for you. And my question is, if the facts present themselves contradictory to your opinion, are you willing to change your opinion? And that's
a good question.
And that's been revealing in terms of in our organization. Whenever I have had these conversations, it's been revealing when people have said sure, and I said then we have to look at facts and not emotions. But sometimes people are very set in their opinion, and that's when opinion becomes ideology. And when you lead through ideology, For example, when you have a government that sways too much to the left or too much to the right, when you lead through ideology, the facts stop to matter.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to, as leaders or as citizens or whatever, that's where we need to check ourselves and start looking at the actual outcome of the decisions and the actions that we take. And I hope that the government in Canada, and then hopefully other governments too, I'm sure people listen around the world for this, will or have leaders that are leading not through ideology, that are wise enough and experienced enough, and themselves have failed enough. Themselves, because when Trudeau got elected, that was my concern. I was like, I don't know if that guy's failed enough. I don't know if he, as Jordan Peterson says, Jordan Peterson said it. He said, has he walked through hell?
Maybe some personal stuff, loss of his brother, loss of his, stuff like that. But certainly in terms of business and career, come on, it's been a cakewalk for him. But whatever, we'll deal with it.
So in closing, I'll say this. I'll quote Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson says that in order to be successful in anything, one has to walk through hell and emerge on the other side. And unfortunately, most people are not willing to walk through hell in order to achieve that. So right now, Alberta is walking through hell, and the rest of the world, guys, look, like you were sitting at home, and there's a little bit of hell. But that is the prerequisite for success, and it will make for a great story one day. There's a little bit of comedy in it too. As I said on a call yesterday, there's a little bit of comedy. So I'll see you guys on the other side. And Kim, thanks again.
Thanks again. And in closing, thanks for everything you're doing, and thanks for the suits and the jackets. Love it.
You look great, man. I want that jacket.